Hello, and welcome to the People Tested podcast with your host, Jack Tatar.
Hi, and welcome to the March-April People Tested podcast. Today we have the pleasure of having Judy Ryan with us. Judy is the founder and owner of Lifework Systems, and Judy is also the author of What's the Deal with Workplace Culture Change. Judy's going to discuss with us today on our podcast about how she helps businesses to affect workplace culture change. I hope you enjoy the broadcast. Thank you very much for joining us here on the People Tested podcast. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to Judy Ryan. Judy Ryan is the author of What's the Deal with Workplace Culture Change. Judy, it's great to be with you. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jack. I just want to say I really appreciate you and all you've been able to do for me by publishing the book. I feel like you put me on the map in a new way, and I'm just really, really grateful to you.
Well, I'm grateful to you, Judy. I mean, I was very impressed with what you're doing and the changes and the impact that you're making on businesses of all sizes out there. So it was my pleasure to help you to get your message out there, because I think it is an important message and an important way to help businesses today in this changing environment. So I appreciate that, Judy. But why don't you tell me a little bit about and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? And I mean, you have a very interesting background. Maybe that's a good place to start. If you can tell us a little bit about your professional background and what you're doing now.
Okay. Well, I think that my background was developed almost as early as when I had my family. And it was really because I was seeing people, adults and children, in work and even in the community at large, that just felt so discouraged and felt pretty miserable. You hear people all the time saying, I just want to get out of the corporate culture. I feel like I'm just a number, that sort of thing. And I knew that there were better ways of doing things so that people didn't so often get discarded or feel put down or feel overlooked or, become miserable. I saw business owners miserable. I saw educators miserable. I saw families miserable. And I knew that there were better ways to do things because I had happened upon them and I had been trained in them and I was having the results of that. So in about 1998, I left a very lucrative position with a software company and founded my own work, and actually founded the company in 2002, but did my work under another umbrella for a couple of years full time. And really, my goal is to create conditions where people are their best. And so when people hear about culture change, they don't really know exactly what that all is. They kind of have their own view of, is it good communications? Well, yes, it is. Is it good teamwork? Well, yes, it is. Is it leadership development? Well, yes, it is. Is it emotional intelligence? Yes, it is. So it's kind of hard for people to grasp what is a healthy workplace and what makes it a healthy one. And that's why I was really intrigued with you describing the purpose of your series of books, What's the Deal With, is just to be able to answer the most basic questions that people might have about workplace culture. So I got started because I could see that there was another way that was not being furthered, and it's still not consistently mainstream yet. There are a lot of other companies that are starting to recognize the importance of healthy workplace culture and employee engagement and all of that. But overall, it's still relatively new in its infancy in terms of becoming more mainstream.
Now, the whole concept of workplace culture, I go back to my years in the corporate world, and there was always the work on defining a mission statement and trying to get to motivate employees. What would you say? What would you say to a company is how they could ultimately define what their workplace culture is? I mean, is there any sort of a quick check or quick litmus test to try and understand what kind of a workplace culture a company has, if it's something maybe they haven't put in a lot of focus in on, or just a way to just kind of quickly say, here's what our workplace culture looks like at this point in time?
Well, I think that's a really rich question, first of all, because you mentioned that a lot of companies started to try to create a mission statement or a purpose statement, and they wanted people to focus on that and be motivated by that and kind of be aligned by that. And that's a good idea in and of itself, and it's very much aligned with what we're doing. We help people be purpose-driven. Where I think culture has often missed is that they don't recognize the importance of putting down the old ways of trying to get good corporate citizenship through control methods, and instead really developing people into leaders so that ultimately every employee becomes responsible for their relationships. They become responsible for how motivated they are, not motivated by others, but that they are internally motivated, and how much they are passionate and excited about their workplace and can remove those blocks. So what has happened is that a lot of times people say, I can't be a good boss and be a friend to my staff, or I can't be a good parent and be a friend to my children. And the reason that they say that is because the old way of doing things is kind of do it because I said so, do it because you'll lose your job if you don't, do it if I dangle a carrot, do it if I tell you that I'm proud of you. But none of those, what we call extrinsic motivation, really develops good employees. So we say that the primary responsibility in a healthy workplace culture is to create an encouraging environment where you're effective at transferring responsibility to other people so that they can become empowered leaders. And that's often at odds with the practices that are actually in play in most companies.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you find that there's differences in terms of workplace culture and affecting change as it relates to workplace culture based upon the size of the company? I mean, is this something that works for a small business as well as a large business, and does it not work for a very large business? What's been your experience?
That's a good question too. It's actually for any size business. I have one company that I've worked with for 5 years that has 7 people, and they're absolutely their brand is their workplace culture. So that's, it depends on the type of leader and what the leader's ultimate end game is. And theirs is to be able to attract and keep good people, to be able to cause a specific level of confidence and success for all of their clients. Their clients now, they've won multiple awards for their workplace culture. So that's on the small end of the spectrum. We've also worked with clients that have 1,500 people in their company. And the way that we are able to do that is because we believe that everybody in a workplace should have access to the same tools and strategies and skills, and that the organization should become masterful in making those new practices part of the regular operations of the business. And so that's really the biggest challenge for most organizations is how do we take this new information and turn it into actual resources for our organization, whether we're small or large. The one that has 1,500, they have over 400 facilities all over 2 state regions. So the way that we help them do that is we help them get that out through a combination of live programming and online programming. So let's say it's a slow, steady process. It's like when a child learns mathematics, they don't learn it in 1 year. Sometimes they learn it over a period of time. That's the same with culture change. It can take a period of time of slow and steady change and measuring and applying and practicing and making sure that it becomes part of the behavior. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. You know, one of the reasons I was very excited about having you as an author and involved with our book series is because I've noticed recently, or over the last few years, there was always this thought process that the customer is our focus, and businesses would say the customer comes first. And I've noticed that there's been a focus with businesses that are service-oriented businesses or customer-focused businesses, or even just large-sized businesses where they're trying to really make an impact, where they've said, you know what, our customer is important, but what's even more important is our employees, and a satisfied and a motivated employee will bring in more customers. And I think we're seeing that with a number of businesses. Just recently, I was on Shake Shack, which is obviously a food business. The CEO said his focus is on making sure that the employees are satisfied. And if the employees are satisfied, that will give him a differentiator and a competitive advantage to bring in more customers. Do you see this as a trend as well, that more companies are starting to pay attention to ensuring that their employees are in a place where they're motivated, enthused, and in a proper workplace? And that is what is helping them to grow their businesses. And in essence, is what you're going in and teaching these businesses, helping them to get to that point?
I think there is a trend toward that, and mainly because, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, I think that the facts in the research indicate that it's poor business not to do that, because there's a cost associated with disengaged employees and a gain associated with engaged employees. So, for example, 16% of the population is considered actively disengaged, and those are the employees that are real troublemakers. They're working against the system. They're gossiping. They're negative. They're pessimistic. They're underperforming. It's interesting because there's a lot of old programming. The customer's always right. The adults always deserve respect as opposed to the youth. That sort of programming of kind of win-lose dynamics. What we really promote is that everybody is important, including the employer. So when we work with employees, we work to build an encouraging environment where they feel empowered, they feel connected and contributing and actually even lovable. But we also help them to cause the same in their employers and in their managers, because they're equally important to that process. So it's not an either or. And I think that's why a lot of people complain about millennials, or they're having trouble retaining millennials. It's because they know that it's possible to have a more democratic, mutually respectful environment, and they're not very tolerant when it's not. So it's really good business and I think business owners are looking at it from even a bottom line emphasis. It's important for them to make the connection between, if my employees are not happy, if they're not engaged, there's a cost associated with that. And so more and more business owners are aware of that connection. There's even statistics to back that up.
Do you find that point about the millennials is a very interesting one? Are you finding that businesses are stepping up and saying that they're looking to do things like affect this workplace culture change in line with the needs of securing millennials and retaining millennials? Do you see that as a trend and a need for businesses?
I don't know that they always realize that that's why the negative trend has been happening. You hear a lot of companies complain about millennials, that they're entitled, that they job hop, all of these things. When we work with companies, we specifically tell them this is an unconventional culture model. It is one based on shared power, on mutual respect, on everybody being developed in moving away from control methods to responsibility-based methods. And so when we make that connection for them, then they see, oh, well, that would make sense why they would job hop or why they would feel disillusioned. And so instead of seeing it as they're the problem, the millennial, they're seeing it as maybe the system needs to be, really considered at this time. And same with engagement. I think if I were to say to most business owners, don't you want your employees to be happy and engaged? Some of them may say, well, I don't really know if I care. And that's the honest to God truth for some of them.
Right.
But even from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense for them to ignore their employees' engagement and their employees' satisfaction, because when they're unhappy, it does trickle down to their customers, and it really has a huge effect on their reputation, their ability to grow, all of the possible solutions that could be put in place. A lot of that, they don't even know they're taking a hit on those until it's pointed out.
Right. And like you say, the old ways of doing things have to be changed to address the new generations coming in and working. So old systems. And not only human systems, which is what I focus on, but really successful businesses of the future are going to be systematized in every way. They're going to need to be able to
understand how they do what they do so that nobody within them it's not dependent on any one person or small group. And so human systems are just another area where people need to have very specific, standardized ways that we deal with gossip, we deal with underperformance, we deal with negative behavior, we deal with communication problems. If they don't have a standardized way that's actually effective, all of those things collectively cost them. And same with their sales systems, their marketing systems, their accounting systems, all of it.
Okay, right. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about your book? Because I think we're finding a lot of success with the book, not just with employees but as well as with employers. That I think the book works very well for laying out a plan and the reasons for why workplace culture change is important. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the book and maybe some of the reasons for why you put this book together?
Well, I think the main reason I put this together is I wanted to just answer the most fundamental questions, and that's what this book really does. It's simple things like, how do I know if the condition of my workplace culture needs to be addressed? How do I assess that? What do I need to do? What do I need to learn? What is the part that I need to play? What do I need to have my senior team understand and commit to do? Why would we transform our culture? If we were going to put in the time and the money, what would be the payoff for that? And if we were going to transform it, how do we know what we transform it from into? Because there's lots of models out there. And so you want to understand the various models and what model that we provide, what is the benefit of that model? And if I do work on my business and the culture, how am I going to stay, keep current within my business? Which is always a challenge because most people that need culture change, they're actually in freak out mode and they're often feeling like things are out of control. So how do I put a process in place that allows me to continue to function but also work on my business? And then is there a process for getting there? And that's the part, I think that's the question that I most like to be able to explain to people in the book is, yes, there is a process. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a specific way to design something for you that's within a framework that you can make work in your workplace. And it's affordable and it's all of that so that people can say, okay, I have a picture of where I'm starting, what I'm ending on, what am I gaining in my culture? And those are questions that people, I always say it's like putting a puzzle together with no picture of the puzzle in front of you. So my intent with the book is to paint that picture. Right. So they at least know what those pieces are. Right.
Well, I think the book is fabulous. The book is so information rich that it's very much like its own textbook. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff in there, a lot of ways for people to processes in there. I mean, reasons for why they need to be doing these things, and it works well as a standalone as well as even kind of a textbook for all employees to use in conjunction with each other. Yeah, I wonder if you could just share with our listeners, Judy, a little bit about your business and what you do with businesses in addition to the book. I know the book is a way that, and I know you've used the book with a number of companies, but maybe talk a little bit about some of the other services that you provide out there to companies in line with the book to really affect workplace culture change.
Well, gosh, I appreciate that question a lot. We have spent a lot of time and invested a lot in making our work truly distributive so that we can bring it to people no matter where they are, no matter how big or small they are, and that it is very end-to-end. So what we usually do with customers is we start with a couple of assessments. One is measuring the levels of trust, the levels of engagement, and how well people in the environment understand and are approving of the purpose, values, visions, goals, procedures, and roles of the company so that they're on board with all of that. And sometimes they don't even know what they are exactly, or they know what they are and they don't like them. So it's really important to know that. We also do a temperament assessment. It's not the DISC or the Myers-Briggs, but it's one that's very strength-based and it's very memorable. So people use it frequently, they refer to it frequently, and it's based on 4 colors. Then we go and we actually start the month-by-month training, and we usually do 2 of these individual modules over a calendar month. People can watch those on their own time. They're designed to be fun. They have video, they have interactions, they have exercises, things that you would normally see in a live workshop. And then the group leaders come together once a month and they lead a group session to review what was learned in the modules, make it relevant to their purpose and values, and then work to apply it as an operational way of, being a resource in their company. And when all that's going on, our team is mentoring the executive team, and the executive team is learning to mentor their direct reports. And so there's this transition from a control-driven environment to one that's focused on intrinsic motivation. And all throughout that process, we're just regularly working with those executives and helping them to own the transformation over time. And then we measure, at the beginning we set performance targets, and then we measure those throughout the duration of our engagement with them. And at the end, the goal is to make sure that these results are exceeded, are met and or exceeded, so that the company can say, wow, that was worth our time and our money in investing in this, because we can see a tangible return on investment. So that's kind of the end-to-end process. And fortunately or unfortunately, I don't want to scare any listeners, but that process is not a short process. If you're going to do it right, it's a slow and steady process.
Right. And I think what our listeners have to recognize, too, is that you work with a full team of people who've been doing this, and experts and knowledgeable people who will be engaged in the process and moving the company forward through this process as well.
Yes. Some of them have had, one of my people has had over 22 years in the corporate environment and understands how not to do it.
Right.
And why it's so important. We have, in addition to our corporate side of the business, we have our education and family sides of the business, and some of our people from that side have a background in education, and they have left their, education jobs, for example, because they want to change the face of the way that we do culture in general. Right. Because it all starts often in our most basic institutions, like our schools were designed to create compliant, conforming factory workers. That's why they're not holding up often. And that same model is used in business, and it doesn't necessarily get us the best results.
Right. Now, I know when we put the book together, there was a lot of feedback and information we received from business leaders about their interest in ensuring that you got into print. Can you share a little bit of the feedback that you've gotten from business leaders to your business and to the book?
Well, we did get some really nice endorsements. One of them was from Maxine Clark, the founder of Build-A-Bear. She said, I don't know why this approach is not being used in all businesses, and that this should really be looked at. We also had, one of our top clients is that client that I mentioned that has 1,500 people that she's responsible for. She's the divisional vice president of operations for rehab care. So she also spoke, and we worked with her over multiple years. The client that I said that was smaller, that had just 7 people, they've worked with us for 5 years, and I wanted them to share multiple examples of how we've been able to impact their culture. So they're actually the lead endorsement, even though they're not as well known, but they've really dug deep and have really made tremendous change to their culture. And then we have some business owners that have worked with multi-million-dollar projects and have been working beside us as partners and as colleagues, and that have a knowledge of what we're doing for multiple entrepreneurs and business owners, and have one is Bill Purnett, one is Les Landis, who are really talking about how this approach time has finally arrived, and that this approach to workplace culture, especially a process-driven approach, is a game changer, just like some of the other game changers, like Michael Gerber's E-Myth, people that have said this is a shift that's going on right now, and we all need to pay attention to it.
Right. That's great. So, Judy, let me just ask as we finish up here, how can our listeners and business leaders find out more about you, get in touch with you, what are the best ways for them to reach out to you and to get in contact with you and see your resources that are available to them?
Well, what I would hope they would do today, and this won't be forever, but for today, we are running a promotion right now, and we have a special page on our website for this, and it's if they just go to www.getmyculturebook.com, that would be a win-win for all of us, for them, for us, for you, because we want people to have the book and to have some samples of what we do so that they can really get the importance of this culture change approach in this process. So that would be one way. The other would just be to visit our website, which is lifeworksystems.com.
Okay.
And of course, they could always email me at that address as well, Judy@lifeworksystems.com.
So Judy at lifeworksystems.com. And what was the name of that page that you've got set up now specifically for the special offer?
It's www.getmyculturebook.com.
Getmyculturebook.com. Okay, that's very good. And once again, Judy's company is called Lifework Systems. And Judy, you're located in the St. Louis area?
Yes, we're in the Midwest, and we can go. We have online training and people that will travel.
Right.
So we can go anywhere in the English-speaking areas of the world.
Yes, and I can attest to that. Judy does get all around the country, and she does a lot of things online and a lot of things over the phone. But meeting her in person is an absolute pleasure as well, and to have her in front of your team is a very compelling and ultimately powerful change agent for your business. Judy, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And once again, Judy's book is called What's the Deal with Workplace Culture Change. It is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. You can also get it at any bookstore. Just walk in, and if they don't have it, you just ask them for it, as well as even check with your local library. Local libraries have it either in their library or as part of their online offerings. A lot of our books are now available through as an ebook through local libraries, so you can check with your local library. But Judy, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Jack, 100 thanks to you as well.
Well, thanks for joining us. That was Judy Ryan of Lifework Systems. And Judy is the author of What's the Deal with Workplace Culture Change. As Judy mentioned, please check out her website at getmyculturebook.com. Once again, that's getmyculturebook.com, where she is actually running a special with her book. In fact, you can get her book free as part of this. So please take a look at that, and thank you for joining us on the People Tested podcast, and we hope to have you back with us again next month.